My stepfather thought it'd be funny to leave me at a Wyoming truck stop. Let's see if he can handle himself, he laughed and drove off. I never looked back. 15 years later, they showed up at my shop. 107 missed calls. I should have trusted my gut the moment we pulled out of the driveway. My name is Ethan. I'm 22 years old, and I used to live in Amarillo, Texas. Back then, I was working as an apprentice mechanic under my stepfather, Martin. Or, more accurately, I was his built-in punching bag who also happened to fix carburetors. He said we were going to a business conference in Wyoming. Martin had a lot of businesses that I never saw any paperwork for. My mom, Deborah, said it'd be good for me, like a bonding trip. Luke, my golden boy stepbrother, said I could use the fresh air. None of that sat right. Martin drove. Luke sat shotgun, talking nonstop about some job interview he had lined up. I was in the back seat next to a duffel bag I hadn't even packed myself. It was stuffed with t-shirts and socks, no wallet, no phone charger. We stopped at a pit stop off Route 287. One of those dusty, cracked old gas stations with a single rusted stall out back. Go ahead, Martin said, parking the SUV. We'll fill up and grab snacks. I got out, squinting against the hot afternoon sun, and went into the bathroom. The lock barely worked. The faucet only sputtered. I remember staring at my reflection and wondering what this conference even was. I came back outside 2 minutes later. The SUV was gone. At first, I just stood there, staring at the empty space like maybe I was mistaken. Like maybe they just pulled around the back. But there was no back lot. No other road. Just sun and dust. I waited. An hour passed. Then 2. I kept telling myself it was some dumb prank. That they'd come roaring back around the corner, laughing their asses off. That Luke would throw open the passenger door and say, "You should have seen your face." But no one came. The gas station attendant, a leathery guy named Pete, offered me a warm Coke and a look that told me he knew exactly what had happened. He didn't ask questions. Just handed me a worn flyer with the number for a homeless resource center up in Casper. I could have called home. I could have begged. But I didn't. Instead, I asked Pete if he had a phone I could borrow. He did. I called the number on the flyer and got through to someone named Tasha, who said they could help me get into town. That evening, a trucker named Jimmy gave me a lift in the cab of his 18-wheeler. He offered me sunflower seeds and didn't ask about my family. I was grateful for both. As we rolled into Casper, the sky turned lavender and blue. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel judged. I just felt gone. And that was exactly what I needed to be. The shelter in Casper wasn't glamorous, but it was safe. They gave me a cot in the back room with the others, men mostly older, some younger, all worn down by something. I kept to myself those first few days. Just listened. Watched. A woman named Carla ran the intake. She had kind eyes and spoke with that steady kind of patience that made you feel like maybe things weren't totally wrecked. She helped me file for a replacement ID, gave me a voucher for new boots, and told me to check the bulletin board every morning for day labor listings. I nodded a lot and said, "Thank you," more times than I could count. The second day, I saw a handwritten note tacked to the board. Car wash help needed. Cash daily. Ask for Yolanda. I walked 20 minutes in the cold to the address. It was a dingy detail shop off the service road, wedged between a pawn shop and a shuttered diner. The faded sign read, "Pristine Shine Auto Spa." A woman with a buzz cut and oil-streaked jeans was wiping down a dusty El Camino out front. "You Yolanda?" I asked, holding up the flyer. She looked me up and down. "You high?" "No, ma'am." "You steal?" "No." "You complain?" "Only when someone hands me boxed mac and cheese without butter." She snorted. "You'll do. Get a bucket." And that was that. For weeks, I scrubbed tires, vacuumed back seats, buffed dried bird crap off sunroofs. Yolanda paid me cash at the end of each day. Not much, just enough for a sandwich, a coffee, and maybe a pair of thick socks from the dollar store. Sometimes she handed me half her own lunch without a word. One morning, she came in while I was washing the inside of a '98 Corolla and said, "You ever think about doing more than wiping down cup holders?" "Every damn day," I replied without even looking up. She grinned. Good. That night, back at the shelter, I sat on the edge of the cot and thought about home. Or whatever passed for home. Martin's gravel voice. Luke's smug grin. My mom's silence whenever I needed her most. I pulled the burner phone out of my coat and scrolled through the missed voicemails, 13 of them. First from Deborah, then Luke, finally Martin. His voice crackled through the speaker. "You got your moment, tough guy. You wanted to see if you could hack it? Well, let's see if you survive, big man." I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I hit redial. Deborah answered. She sounded surprised. "Ethan? Where?" I cut her off. Put him on. There was a pause, a rustle, and then Martin's voice came on, smug as ever. "Thought you'd crawl back eventually." I kept my tone even. "You wanted to see if I'd survive, right?" He chuckled. "Yeah. Then watch me." Click. I powered the phone off and dropped it into the donation box on my way out the next morning. No one came looking for me, which suited me just fine. I had buckets to carry, cars to scrub, and calluses to build. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And every dollar I earned meant I owed them one less thing. By the end of that winter, Yolanda handed me a ring of keys and said, "You open now. Don't be late." I hate late. I nodded, trying not to smile. "Yes, ma'am." She grunted and walked away, which I took as congratulations. I'd moved out of the shelter by then. A guy at the soup kitchen told me about a room for rent above a pawn shop near the edge of town, $300 a month, no lease, and the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. But it had a bed, a door that locked, and a window that faced west. I taped a photo of a 1969 Mustang Fastback on the wall and called it home. I still worked for Yolanda, but now she had me doing customer intakes, running the register, even ordering supplies when she didn't want to deal with idiot vendors. I wore a clean shirt and used her old laptop to Google part numbers. I never had a job where people looked me in the eye and didn't assume I was about to screw it up. With the little extra I was making, I signed up for part-time online classes in electrical systems. Stuff like diagnostics, circuitry, soldering. Martin used to call that useless nerd crap. Said real men worked with their hands. Turns out, I could do both. Yolanda started letting me mess around with junked electronics she kept in a back closet. Old microwaves, busted fans, things customers left behind. One day, I found a dusty jukebox someone had traded for a set of tires and decided I was going to fix it. Took me 3 weeks, 5 YouTube tutorials, and 2 trips to the salvage yard. When I finally got the thing to light up and play an old Roy Orbison track, Yolanda stopped what she was doing, walked over, and said, "You got magic hands, kid." I didn't know what to say. No one had ever said something like that to me before. Not without some kind of punchline at the end. I nodded and looked away so she wouldn't see my face. Nights were still hard sometimes. I'd scroll through old family photos on public profiles I hadn't blocked yet. Birthday parties I was never invited to. Christmas dinners with Luke holding court like he ran the place. Deborah always looked tired in those pictures. Like she was trying to disappear behind her wine glass. I wondered if she missed me. Wondered if she told people I'd left or if she just let them assume I'd failed somehow. I didn't check the voicemails anymore. I knew what they'd say. The guilt, the sarcasm, the vague threats disguised as concern. One night, I sat on the roof of the pawn shop with a ham sandwich and a can of off-brand soda, listening to the jukebox downstairs thump through the floorboards. I felt steady. I was still poor. Still lonely sometimes. But I wasn't lost. And I wasn't theirs anymore. The first time I noticed her, she was wearing scrubs with paw prints on them and holding a microwave in both arms like it was going to bite her. She stepped through the glass door, kicked it closed behind her, and said, "Hi. This thing's dying. It smells like something's burning when I use it. Think you can take a look?" I wiped my hands on a towel and nodded toward the back. "Yeah, let me just finish rinsing this car out. You can leave it on the counter." She set it down carefully. "It's old. Like, really old. But I'm too broke for a new one, so..." I glanced at her. She had a ponytail pulled through a ball cap that read Happy Tales Vet Clinic. "I'll see what I can do." That was how Nina walked into my life. Like she'd always been heading there. She started coming in a couple times a week after that. Sometimes to check on the microwave. "Any luck?" she'd ask, leaning on the counter, sipping a fountain drink. Other times just because she was on lunch and didn't want to sit alone in the clinic break room. I learned her dog's name was Beans. That she was studying for her vet tech certification and hated anatomy flashcards more than anything on earth. That she lived with 2 roommates who never bought toilet paper and borrowed her clothes without asking. I told her about the jukebox. About Yolanda and the shelter and my new room above the pawn shop. Not everything. Not yet. But enough to feel like she saw more of me than most ever had. The microwave? I fixed it. Replaced a capacitor, cleaned out the crusty mess behind the panel, and wrapped it with a fresh cord. Give it back to her in a cardboard box with a sticky note that said, "Try not to nuke the building." She laughed so hard she nearly dropped it. "You're a weirdo," she said. But like, in a good way. From there it became a routine. Coffee runs, shared fries out of brown paper bags, long talks in the alley behind the shop after her shift. Our hands would sometimes brush, and neither of us would move away. We kissed for the first time on a rainy Thursday, standing under the buzzing fluorescent light outside the detail bay. Her cheeks were cold, and her lips tasted like spearmint gum. I think I said something stupid like, "Finally," and she said, "Shut up," and kissed me again. Later that week, I told her the whole truth. About the road trip, the bathroom, the car disappearing down Route 287 like I never existed. She didn't say much right away, just took my hand and held it for a long time. "You deserved better," she whispered finally. "But I'm really glad you're here now." So was I. Because for the first time, I didn't feel like something broken someone left behind. I felt chosen. A couple years passed like pages in a book I never thought I'd get to read. Yolanda opened a second location near the old train depot, and when she handed me a clipboard and said, "You're co-manager now. Don't screw it up," I nearly dropped the thing. She raised an eyebrow and added, "And don't hug me. I'll punch you." I didn't hug her, but I did smile the whole drive home. Nina passed her certification and got a full-time job at the animal hospital on 10th Street. We moved into a modest two-bedroom place on the outskirts of town, a quiet neighborhood with cracked sidewalks and mailboxes that leaned slightly to one side. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. I fixed up the garage so I could tinker on junk radios and broken lamps in the evenings. Nina called it my electrical cave. Things were good. Then one night, I opened an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, just a short message and a link. Thought you should know. An old neighbor. Curious, I clicked. It was a news story from Amarillo. A local auto garage, Martin's Garage, was shutting down amid a civil lawsuit. Unpaid wages. Faulty repairs. Something about threats to a customer. I sat there staring at the screen, not feeling much of anything. Later, out of habit, I typed Luke's name into Google. There it was. A mugshot. He looked bloated, hair shorter, smile gone. Public disturbance at local bar. No injuries reported. I expected to feel something. Anger. Satisfaction. Some sense of justice. But there was nothing. Just quiet. Nina walked in while I was still staring at the laptop. "You okay?" she asked, setting her keys on the counter. I shrugged and turned the screen toward her. She read it in silence. When she looked back up at me, I must have had that old look in my eyes. The one I used to wear like armor. "You don't have to carry them anymore," she said softly. "They can't find you here unless you invite them." I stared at her for a moment, then back at the screen. And I clicked delete. No reply. No message. No stalking their downfall. They were collapsing just fine on their own. That night, I unplugged for a while and sat on the back step watching the neighbor's porch light flicker. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel bitter. I just felt clean. And that was enough. It started with a ping. I was checking the shop's email one morning when a LinkedIn notification slid across my screen. "Martin Harding viewed your profile." I stared at it for a good minute, unsure whether to laugh or slam the laptop shut. I hadn't used that profile much in years, just enough to stay in touch with a few vendors and old classmates. But apparently, Martin was still out there clicking around. I didn't respond. Didn't block him either. I just closed the tab. 3 days later, they showed up. It was a slow Thursday. The second shop was mostly empty except for a guy waiting on his Subaru and a woman picking up floor mats. I was out front, messing with a busted card reader, when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up and saw all three of them walk in: Martin, Deborah, and Luke. And behind Luke was a woman I didn't recognize, tall and tan, holding a designer purse like she was scared to touch anything. It hit me like a cold slap. Not one of them looked ashamed. Martin had lost weight, looked pale and stiff, like he hadn't been eating right. Deborah's hair was thinner, her eyes darting around the shop like she didn't want to be seen. Luke had on a button-up shirt and that same fake charm he always wore when he needed something. "Ethan," Deborah said, stepping forward, arms open like nothing had happened. "Look at you. This place is, wow." I didn't say a word. Luke gave me a smirk. "Didn't think you'd end up running your own joint, little bro, good for you." Martin just grunted and rubbed his jaw. "You got a minute? We could use a favor." I didn't invite them into the office. I just gestured toward the little folding table near the vending machine. Nina showed up 10 minutes later, still in scrubs, and sat beside me. She didn't ask questions, just gave me a look. I nodded once. Deborah launched into it. Something about Martin's health issues. How the lawsuit drained their savings. How Luke's job hadn't panned out. They needed a little help getting back on their feet. A small loan, just until things stabilized. $15,000, Luke said casually. "We'll pay you back, of course, once the new business kicks off." I didn't flinch, just folded my hands. "Dinner. Tonight. My place." Martin raised a brow. "To talk about it." I nodded. "That's right. You want my help? You come sit at my table." They hesitated, but agreed. As they left, Nina turned to me. "You sure about this?" "I want to hear them out. On my terms." She rested a hand on my shoulder. "Just remember, closure doesn't mean fixing them." I nodded. I knew that. But they came into my shop, walked through my door, and for once, I wanted them to see where I stood. Literally, let them see what surviving looked like. Without them, I spent the afternoon cleaning the apartment. Not because I wanted to impress them, but because this was my home. Our home. I made the place look like we lived well, not rich. Just real. Nina cooked her signature chicken pot pie, and I set the table with the mismatched plates we'd bought at a thrift store during our first month living together. At 7 on the dot, the buzzer rang. I opened the door to find them all standing there like they were walking into a job interview. Fake smiles, stiff posture, overly polite nods. Luke's girlfriend looked like she regretted coming the second she stepped inside. Deborah clutched a store-bought pie like a peace offering. Thought I'd bring something sweet. Nina took it and said, "We already have dessert," setting it on the counter without another word. We sat. It was painfully polite at first. Small talk. Deborah commented on how cozy the place was. Martin said nothing, just picked at the napkin in his lap. Luke tried to steer the conversation toward business ideas, something about a detailing franchise in Lubbock. I let it all play out for a while. Then I leaned forward and said, "Let's talk about that favor." Their eyes lit up. I kept my voice calm. "But first, I want to talk about Wyoming." Deborah blinked. "Wyoming? Yeah. Route 287. That gas station. You remember." Silence. Nina stayed quiet, watching. Martin cleared his throat. "That was a long time ago. No need to rehash." "No," I cut in. "Let's rehash. I want to make sure I remember it right." I looked at Luke. "You told me to grab snacks." Then the SUV was gone. I waited in the sun for hours. Luke shifted in his seat. "It was a mistake. We panicked. Thought you'd catch up. You drove off and didn't call me for 3 days." Deborah winced. "We didn't know how to explain it. You didn't want to. That's the difference." I leaned back in my chair and folded my arms. "But here you are, needing help. And suddenly, I'm not so disposable." Martin's face tightened. "We said we're sorry." "No, you didn't." More silence. I reached into a folder beside me and pulled out a check. Handed it across the table. Martin unfolded it slowly. "Read the amount." Confusion twisted his face. $62.25, he said. "The cost of a Greyhound ticket from that gas station back to Amarillo," I said calmly. "Plus tax." Luke laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're joking, right?" I shook my head. "You left me there like trash. So if you're asking for money now, that's what your help's worth to me." Martin's voice rose. "We're your family." Deborah's eyes welled up. "Ethan, don't do this. We're in a bad place." "Yeah," I said. "I was too. You didn't care." Luke sneered. Still the dramatic little runt. "Huh? All this just to feel powerful." I stood. "No. Just to be clear. I'm not your wallet. I'm not your doormat. And I'm not your second chance." Nina got up beside me, standing shoulder to shoulder. She didn't say a word. I walked to the door, opened it, and said, "We're done here." Martin's face flushed red. Deborah stood, crying. Luke cursed under his breath as he stormed past me. No one said goodbye. When the door clicked shut behind them, I exhaled. My legs felt steady, my chest light. I turned to Nina. She smiled softly. "I really am free," I whispered. And I finally believed it. The third shop opened on a chilly March morning with half the lights still flickering and a coffee machine that only worked if you kicked it first. But the sign out front was brand new, clean and bold. Revive Auto. Owner, Ethan Harding. The name hit me every time I saw it, like a reminder that I'd built something real, piece by piece, callus by callus. And it didn't come from a handout. It didn't come from anyone who used to call me son or brother. It came from me. By then, my life looked nothing like the one I'd been handed at 22. Nina and I had a toddler named Milo, stubborn, loud, and already obsessed with toy trucks. He called every car Mama's car and insisted on helping me with my tools, even if that just meant banging a plastic wrench against the coffee table. Yolanda had retired the year before, surprising me with a set of business keys taped to a sticky note that read, "Don't burn it down." I framed that note. It hangs on the office wall of the second shop. Most evenings, after dinner, I'd still head out to the garage behind our house. Not because I had to, but because it calmed me. I liked fixing things. Radios, clocks, old gearboxes that people gave up on. I liked hearing broken parts hum again, even if no one else saw the point. One night, while Milo was napping and Nina was scrolling through her phone on the couch, she sat up suddenly and said, "You need to see this." She turned her screen toward me. It was a screenshot of a comment on a local small business blog. The article had been about Revive Auto's community work, specifically the mentorship program we'd started with the shelter, offering teens a path into trades, the way Yolanda once did for me. The comment read, "You saved my life more than you know. JH." I stared at it, mouth slightly open. My heart did something strange in my chest. "JH, Nina said quietly. "You think it's Luke." I finished. She nodded. I didn't say anything right away. Just kept looking at those few typed words. They could have come from anyone. Could have been a coincidence. But something in my gut said it wasn't. I didn't reply to the comment. Didn't reach out. Just let it sit there. "Are you okay?" Nina asked gently. I nodded and pulled Milo onto my lap where he'd waddled over in his pajamas. He pressed a gummy wrench into my hand and said, "Fix it." I smiled. "Okay, buddy. Let's fix it." We sat there, tinkering under the yellow light in the garage while Nina leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, watching us with that quiet smile she always saved just for home. Outside, the porch light flickered once. But inside, everything was steady. No ghosts. No guilt. Just a new life, humming with the sound of second chances.